Welcome in to another edition of Kickin' It. My name is Jeff Woody. We are here with Aiden White behind the producer board, behind the sticks, behind the mic.
What's up?
That's all we need from Aiden. And also here with Grant Mahoney. And how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Just kicking it.
The people on the audio podcast can't see you deadpan to the camera. They can't see you Jim from The Office.
Just a plug to check out our YouTube so you can see our pretty smiling faces.
And this nice Drake Bulldogs hat.
Go Dogs.
The first place Drake Bulldogs.
Speaking of first place, hey-o.
Hey-o. I only cover first place teams. Just
That's
saying. So we are presented by Kelder Manufacturing, as always. If harvest season's over, but if harvest season was rough on your equipment, you know where you'd go. If you need, whether it's replace, repair, if you want something done to a heavy machinery you have, go to Kelder Manufacturing. Good Cyclone fans down in Southeast Iowa. Iowa State with a 30-18 win over the Baylor Bears down in Waco. That sort of felt like a sleepwalk game. And when you can sleepwalk to a 12-point win, you're doing things all right.
Yeah, when Iowa State came out, 4 or 5 plays and then scored like super easy, I was like, wow, this might be a real ugly game. Yeah, it was real fun.
So yeah, I didn't get to see the whole thing live. And I joke about the Drake hat. So I do color with Michael Admire for the ESPN broadcasts for Drake. And if you listen to Fart, we talked about that for a decent amount. I think everyone probably got sick of it because Connor and I are into it. Nobody else is into it. But Drake currently in first place. And so we got to call another win where they just beat the living shit out of Stetson, which is not a Cologne. It is a school. So that game gets done at maybe 3:15. And normally when that happens, I just have the game on DVR, but this is on the ESPN Plus app, where this is well documented that I think the ESPN Plus app is not good.
It's your Samsung TV.
Well, it's Samsung TV. It literally won't let me so went to a laptop and also a phone. It froze 3 times during live stream. Had to cancel the stream, bring it back up. Iowa State, to not to go too far from this, Iowa State will not have to worry about streaming issues because they are on big ESPN. Do we go to the broadcasters for that one yet?
Let me look it up.
Okay. But on big ESPN at 6 p.m., that is going to be a hopped up environment.
Iowa State's also on ESPN for the BYU game at 9 o'clock.
9:15
Put your
p.m.
jammies on, Jeff.
That's going to be one. You're going to watch that one and, you take a nap during the day.
I'll be in bed as I watch that game.
I think the last time they had a 9 p.m. Central kickoff was UNLV back in 2021. And that was actually the week that I got married, and we got married in South Carolina, which was an hour ahead. So that game kicked off, and it was was that a Saturday? Yeah, that was a Saturday night game. That game kicked off at 10:15, and it's the week of a wedding, and it was a destination wedding. So it was just one of those like rent a house things, and there's a bar in the house. And so all the cousins, aunts and uncles, whatever, the cousins Aaron's cousin-in-law, it's cousin's husband, a great guy named Brad. He went to Georgia Tech, and so he's a Georgia Tech fan, doesn't have any reason to root for Iowa State. So he was just bartending for all the rest of the Iowa State fans the entire time. So it was like 1 a.m. by the time that game got done. Super fun time because Iowa State won that 1-0 Now, this game, I don't think this Kansas game isn't going to be 1-0. I don't think BYU is going to be 1-0. But that Baylor game, to come back to that was our niche is sort of special teams, sort of a special teams push, but just offensively and defensively, when your B- game can beat another opponent by 2 scores, that says a lot about where Iowa State is currently.
I wouldn't disagree that it was a special teams push, but Iowa State didn't really have any hiccups.
It's true.
Baylor did. I jinxed him, Jeff. I said he's perfect on the year, 11 for 11. He's now 11 for 12.
Hey,
mother sucker. Got him. You don't talk about a perfect game. I talked about it, got his ass.
We just need to find some statistic that matters to the opponent. It doesn't even matter what it is. Like perfect exchanges between the quarterback and the center all season.
There it is.
There you go.
Watch for fumbles on Saturday evening.
Yeah. Well, I think the only negative thing that happened for Baylor was obviously a blocked extra point, which not great, especially when you're trying to get back into the game. You just score, it's after the interception at the very end of the first half. You just score, you're getting some momentum, you're going into halftime, you get the interception. That big white running back trucks his way through into the end zone, you're all hyped up. All 38 Baylor fans there are juiced. And then extra point gets blocked.
I'm not even sure it was blocked. I think he drilled it in the back of his.
Oh, he did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
he hit it in
the back of his guy's head, which is like, I mean, nasty,
do you think that's
nasty
wet?
conditions.
Do you think the wetness had something to do with that?
It didn't look like a clean operation. Like it looked like their kicker, like it wasn't a smooth approach at the ball. So I'm not exactly sure what happened if the holder kind of bobbled it, but he just crushed the back of his guy's head. Poor guy. He probably got not concussed, but didn't feel good, I'm sure.
It's like getting rear-ended in bumper cars, where like it doesn't feel great, but it's not dangerous. It's just uncomfortable.
I'm sure his lineman looked back like, "Hey man, what the hell was that?
What the hell, dude?" And then they inexplicably went for 2 after they score a touchdown to bring it within 2 scores, and then went to bring it to they were down. What was it? Down 15. And then went for it on 2. So scored a touchdown, brings it to within 1 score. Could either go for 2 later or go for 2 now. They went for 2 now, then missed it, and we're down by 9. Iowa State scores another touchdown. The game's basically over. So, Caden, who we got for broadcasters?
So it's a little earlier in the week, so I don't think it's officially announced. But basing it off of last week's 7 o'clock ESPN kickoff, it was Joe Tessitore, which I don't know if you guys remember a specific game.
Little Joe Tess.
Joe Tess called.
Big game Joe.
And then
Blackledge?
Bachelor legend Jesse Palmer.
Oh, Jesse
Let's
Palmer.
go! All
And it
right.
has
right.
Katie George as a sideline
That
reporter.
handsome
Never heard of
devil
her.
Jesse Palmer.
Again, that's nothing official. That's just me.
It's probably so Herb Street and Fowler do
They do ABC.
ABC. They do the ABC night game.
Yep.
And then the big ESPN is going to be the number 2. And did Blackledge move to? I think Blackledge moved to NBC. So Todd Blackledge used to be the number 2. I think he moved to NBC because I remember him calling one of like the weird NBC Big Ten night games because all the renegotiations. But I mean, Palmer's fine.
Jesse Palmer. I'm
Joe Tess is great.
growing up. I was a big Bachelor fan, so I've watched The Bachelor for a long time. I stopped more recently because, like, I know you don't care about this.
I don't.
I do. I love The Bachelor.
But like the girls go on there now, and they just want to be like Instagram. Like it sucks. Golden Bachelor now though.
I haven't started it.
What? There's only
Is it
like
good?
8. It's only like 8 episodes. I mean, it's people in their golden ages. It's great.
Isn't that guy 72? Looks. I mean,
He
handsome
might be.
devil.
Yeah.
He's from Iowa, isn't he?
No, Ohio, I think.
No, I think he's originally from Iowa.
Oh,
Like he
wow.
might be from
He's
Ohio.
a salt of the earth dude though. His name's Gary. Just
Unfortunately, he's a Hawkeye fan.
for real.
For real.
I'm done watching it, dude. You ruined it for me. The finale. Oh, only like 8 episodes. I'm sure they're like, oh, this is gonna be good or not. It was great though. Super nice guy. Like, yeah. But yeah, he's a 72, and all the contestants are all like mid 60s to early 70s. I
So-
really don't care, but it's quality programming. It's people who are truly trying to find love, except instead of the normal Bachelor, which is you got these catty girls that are just on there to get Instagram famous. That they're not there to find love. They're just there to win and get their Instagram followers up.
Get their Instagram followers up.
So Jesse Palmer.
Anyway, Jesse Palmer is potentially calling the game, which it's Joe Tess is great. Any game Joe Tess is calling it sounds more impactful. That it doesn't really matter what the game is. Like it's like a 27-point win by I don't know UAB, and Joe Tess would be calling it. I'm locked in. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we're gonna spend more time on the Baylor game on Fart, but we do need to cover hidden yards. Because it's not as much fun this week. Hidden yards, what do we got? So hidden yards, as a reminder for those, it is how many yards does one team need to gain to get to where the other team started. So if your team starts on the 30, my team starts on the 20, I need to gain 10 yards to just get to where you started, and then just accumulate that over the course of a game, and that is the total hidden yardage. And so you exclude drives that you're not trying to advance the ball. So exclude any kneel downs, which Iowa State had 2 kneel downs at the end of each half, 1 to end the game, 1 to end the first half. So those don't count because they're not actively trying to gain yards. So total hidden yardage, Iowa State plus or minus what?
So total yardage period for the game, Iowa State had 400 on the dot. Nice. And Baylor had 306. I'm going to say that, let's see, they had a shanked punt, 16 yards, an absolute boomer, which helped us. I'm going to say that Iowa State had 85 yards of hidden yardage.
Advantage?
Yes.
Aiden?
I was going to go 70.
It is 33 yards.
That's it,
Shoot.
really.
Baylor in the advantage. So,
Wow.
Baylor
Really?
so here's the reason is they had 1 extra drive because Baylor had 12 drives, Iowa State had 11 drives. If you're talking about total yardage, Baylor actually had 33 additional yards that Iowa State didn't need to gain, which is why it was more or less a special teams push, which I think when like I was watching the Chiefs game on Sunday, and there was, I mean, Denver beat Kansas City for the first time since like 1963. And one of the plays that happened is literally when I was discussing kind of punt coverage necessity, which was if a player calls a fair catch, and a valid fair catch, we're not going to do any more of that. If they call valid catch, hand over head, balls up in the air, they call that a fair catch. The first guy down, it's not just like go huddle around the guy. Like there's actual specific things that you're trying to do. So if a guy calls a fair catch and the punter has hung it up high enough that you can actually get down there in coverage, first guy goes and sits in front of where the halo would be. So like you get a yard between the shoulders of the body of the returner, and then 1 yard forward from that. You cannot be in that because that's violation of the personal space, the halo rule, the ability to receive the catch. So one guy stands right in front of it. The next guy down stands behind it because if the ball squirts away, then you don't know if it's going forward or going backwards. So then you have a guy covered on both sides. And then once and if the ball hits the ground, one guy's responsibility is to get on the ball. Another guy's responsibility is to tackle the returner, essentially to pull him away from where the ball is. Denver executed that perfectly, and that play switched. The game was still fairly close at that point, as I recall. I think it might have been a 7-point game between Denver and Kansas City. Muff a punt, Denver executes that, to a T, and after that happens, Denver scores another touchdown. Game goes 2 scores, whole thing's split, and like that, it felt like that game was the Denver-Kansas City game was really exciting because these big things happened and these unexpected change of possession things on special teams happened. And not to come back to the Baylor and Iowa State game and say that it was boring, but it was good boring. There wasn't really a lot that happened that was like, wow. I mean, Bramer had a couple nice receptions. Norton had a hell of a touchdown run. Higgins had a great touchdown reception. Verdun had a nice pick. But like all those things felt like it was sort of in the routine of the offense. And again, just which makes me feel comfortable going into the back portion of the season as the schedule ramps up a little bit in intensity, that Iowa State's B- game can still get a win, which means when you're playing against a team like Kansas, you don't need to be perfect to beat Kansas, even though they just beat Oklahoma.
I would say too, this might have been Rocco's worst performance as a starter. It wasn't a bad performance, but he missed.
Iowa wasn't good, but
Iowa wasn't good, yeah.
Yeah, but that's also playing Iowa.
Yeah, but as far as like his progression has been ramped up, and he takes a step back, which is fine. He's a freshman. I mean,
and it was soaking wet.
Yeah, so given the conditions, and he missed. And I wasn't a quarterback, so I'm not sure what it's like to throw a wet ball, but he missed 2 wide open receivers. Could have gone for 2 more touchdowns.
Yeah, Daniel Jackson had one that was wide open, and
Higgins had one as well.
And Higgins had one, and there's also the interception was kind of looked like it slipped out of his hand, kind of thrown it over the middle. I don't remember who he was trying to get it to, maybe Jalen Knoll, but ball slipped high, and there's the interception. So like he wasn't great.
But to be honest, it's good to have a bad game now, learn from those, because the schedule does ramp up these next 4 games.
And you still get a win.
And you still get a win. And other guys stepped up that, like, I'm so happy for Norton, man. He's been hurt his entire time he's been here, and to have a good game like he had, to see him pull away from guys too, it's like, hey, I thought this guy had piano was back the whole time. Joke's on me. Dude's kind of got some wheels.
Yeah, too bad. Everyone thought that he couldn't run fast. I'm calling that to every single person who said that he was too slow to play. I mean, I'm not necessarily like the Cartavius Norton apologist. Like he has missed a good number of reads, but like to say that he can't outrun somebody, it's a 49-yard play. That's about as long as a run is going to be.
I'm not trying to dog the guy, but like on that run, he was scooting, but he's kind of running like, like you have like a dog's like trying to bite your butt. You're just kind of like, oh, I got like, oh,
tuck your hips up a little bit.
Kind of pinch your butt cheeks and go. Like that's kind of how he was
it's about
going.
knee drive,
like,
man.
Huh?
It's all about jizzing your knees up.
That's right. I mean, dude was scooting. I was happy to see it. He had a good game. I think that first touchdown by Higgins was, the announcers. Those guys were brutal.
Yeah,
they were brutal.
Yeah,
they were trying to dog that throw on Rocco, but I'm like, I think he put it right where he needed to, and Higgins, put it out there.
Okay, so
let this guy make a play.
It was a throw. It was a throw to the inside, which on a fade ball, a lot of times you don't want to leave that ball inside of the defender, because best case scenario for you is your guy goes to make a play. Most likely scenario is the guy can just turn around and bat it down. But if you leave it inside, no DB is going to be playing an outside technique down the field. They're going to be playing an inside technique, meaning that it's going to be defender, offensive player, sideline in that order. And so if you leave the ball inside, it increases your chances. However, if the guy's not looking, then you can leave the ball inside, because if he's not looking, it's going to be a PI, or you can't cover what you can't see. So he's not looking at the ball to see it. But like, I just want to say one thing about the broadcasters, because like, the thing, I feel bad for them a little bit, but I also think that it's self-imposed. So they're new, sure, and I'm also new. I've been doing high school games for a couple of years for MediaCom, and then doing actual college games for 2 years. So I'm not saying like I'm a grizzled veteran, but preparation goes into it, where you have to understand enough of what the roster is that they give you a pronunciation guide, is go through that ahead of time. Like, know where the playmakers are going to be. And you don't necessarily even get game film. Like, you'd have to potentially ask the SIDs. Sometimes they'll give you some, sometimes they won't. Sometimes it's on accessible TV. With the Big 12, every game is accessible. You could just go back and watch 1 or 2 or 3 games. But just didn't have, like, when the pronunciation wasn't right, that feels like it's a lack of preparation, because they literally give you a sheet that says, like, it would be spelled Bo, Free space Ler. Bo Freeler. Got it. That's how you pronounce it. Then you say it that way, just so you know how that's done. Now, I've screwed up a couple names myself, and it's usually like the Drake is up 35 points against somebody, or down 55 points to somebody else, and there's like a backup safety who makes a pass breakup, and you're
From
like,
Russia, and you're
like,
oh.
I don't. There's 13 syllables in this name. I didn't check the pronunciation guide of the 4th string safety, so I'm going to do my best.
You ever say his first name?
And that's a breakup by Tom.
Great job, Tom.
Good job, Tom.
Try it. Try something.
Just to see, just really screw with some. Timmy.
Yeah.
It's his nickname. It's Timmy. Guys call him.
Lean into it. The Ames. His friends call him Timmy Tom. Timmy Tom on the breakup.
Just make up anything. No, but that was yeah, it was harder to watch. But yeah, I mean, they also this is another little behind the curtain. Is sometimes I'll get down on myself, because like, how do these guys know, and can you pick out exactly what was going on? You know, they have this great camera angle of a linebacker making a scraping over the top of something, and there's 12 guys or 22 guys in the field. How do you know which one to watch to pull that out? Well, guys like Herb Street and guys like Collinsworth and the ones that are way up there, like the production team underneath them is like 30 people. So they've got a camera trained on every single one, and the producer's really experienced. So he can say, like, as the play is going on, it'll be like, and Jackson to the 15, to the 10, 5, touchdown, celebration, leave the camera on, pan around the celebration. Well, while that's going on, the color guy is getting a replay, and the producer in his ear is going, hey, we got a linebacker, left side of your screen, linebacker scraping over the top. And then you get to see it one time, then you get to call it, like, then you get to recall the play. And so, like, that's a well-oiled machine on like the NBC Sunday night broadcast. Collinsworth also been doing it for like 25 years, but still, like, you get a producer in your ear, you understand how to do that. On the ESPN Plus broadcast, the resources aren't there to do that. So it's probably just like one producer in the truck directing the cameras and directing the replays and directing the commercials and directing when local commercial breaks and all that kind of stuff. So they don't have the same kind of like replay call up. They don't have, here's where this thing is going. Hey, by the way, this receiver's out. They don't have all that, but yeah, it was just unprepared.
I think those producers had also covered Baylor last week, so that's why they kind of sounded like they're maybe a little more in favor of Baylor, because they were just more familiar with them. But yeah, the pronunciation, there was one where Bramer had a catch, and like, great catch by Steve O'Klotz. And I was like, they're not built the same. Their numbers not even close to being the same. What are we doing here, guys?
Oh, man.
Jeff's least favorite player, Malik Verndon.
Yep, Malik Verndon. Good player. Verdon?
Oh, were you a fan of him?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Again, I'm coming for you, Williams. I'm coming for you.
I don't think you ever mentioned him before, come to think of it.
Speaking
of
smack
you in the face.
Of Verndon, though, hopefully Cooper's okay. He didn't play much the fourth quarter. I think he got dinged up a bit. So
yeah, I will say, so if Ben Nickel has to play, playing Cooper's position is better than playing Verndon.
There you go, Verndon.
Malik Vadern.
You're calling a Drake game right now. Verndon.
Malik. Good play by Malik. What's his name? Verndon? Is that how you pronounce it?
Just make something up.
Malik Vehicle. Anyway, so if he's playing Jeremiah Cooper's position, it's going to be much better than playing Malik Verdun's, because he doesn't have as much run responsibility. They are there, but he's primarily going to be back one of the coverage guys. He's not going to be as up in the box. So Ben Nickel is a good or fine cover safety. He is not great in the run. The downside is that Kansas is going to run a lot. Now, I didn't get to watch the Kansas game, so this is just going off like the stat sheet. Kansas looked good in the running game, but their defense still for the second year in a row is kind of trash.
Yeah. So the key, I mean, I was just kind of looking at, Kansas throughout the year. The 2 games that they've lost, they've rushed for under 30 attempts a game. So they want to run the ball. But the games that they have lost, they've gotten down early. So I think the key for Iowa State is get up early, get a 14, 17 point lead, which I know is easier said than done. Make them throw the ball. And I think Iowa State's got would have a much more comfortable game as opposed to having it be a shootout back and forth, because they are going to try to run the ball. I know that Lance Leipold had Leipold, right? Leipold. Lance.
Good job, Lance.
I know Lance had said that Jalen Daniels may not be ready. I'm not sure I'm buying it. I think you always got to go in preparing, obviously, for both. I think Jason Bean's a good quarterback too, though.
Jason Bean can run. He can't. I mean, he was 15 of 32 with 2 interceptions passing.
So I'm saying we want to make them. Iowa State, we should make them. Which I know it's easier said than done, but pass the ball, and they've been good at stopping the run this year.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Michael Swain, who covers Kansas later in the episode to talk more about Kansas itself. But just so we'll I think as far as like the preparation of the game, the only thing we'll do before we actually get him on is that I think this is going to be a test for Kansas to be able to recover from that adrenaline, because your big noon kickoff, you have everything, all the attention's there. You're playing Oklahoma. It's a home game. You win this last second, because Oklahoma had a chance to win that game. If they just they had a Hail Mary at the end, basically, from like the 25-yard line. So it wasn't even a Hail Mary. It was like a hope this works. And they almost got the reception. They would have won the game, but you escape, storm the field, you throw the goalpost in the river, and now you got to come back and do it again. And the team,
but not just do it again.
You have to do it in Ames against a team that's just about as good as the team that you just played on the road at night. And so, like,
on primetime TV.
On primetime. So, like,
probably with fireworks, probably in the black uniforms.
Probably. I mean, the energy is going to be wild, and you have to be able to match that. And so, like, recovering from all that adrenaline is a really difficult thing to then get back into the rhythm of practice to say, like, all right, we need to have this intensity again. Well, you just had you had 100%. You're not going to have 100% again, but can you make sure that it's not an 80? Because if Kansas comes in flat, Iowa State played the game against Baylor pretty much flat and still won by 2 scores. It's not saying that Iowa State are world beaters, because they still have their mistakes, but it's a solid team now that you can expect both offensive, defensive, and special teams wise. Can Kansas keep their shit together and not come out with a hangover game? And if I'm Iowa State, I feel a lot better about that, because they had their hangover game. They had a bye week. They started the game great. They're up 17-0, but like they had to sleepwalk through the whole thing, and they had a half effort game. Again, not saying it's half effort, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a game that they weren't sharp, still managed to win. And now you can have that correction in film coming off a W, as opposed to all your energy expenditure goes into beating Oklahoma. Now, that's why I feel more confident about Iowa State than I otherwise would have. So, like, I'm glad, I think, for Iowa State's sake, that Kansas won in the way that they did.
Yeah, it's hard to come off of like an huge emotional victory like that, and then, like you said, come back on the road, especially in the environment they're gonna come into, and repeat that performance. Not saying that Iowa State's Oklahoma, but just put together.
I don't think they're that far off. I honestly don't think they're that far off.
Now,
yeah. I think one of the other things, this is sort of a kind of side diatribe, and then we'll bring in Michael. But
one thing I do want to say before we bring in Michael, but you continue.
So one of the things that is interesting that I kind of want to get out of the way a little bit is that at the beginning of the season, everybody thought that Texas and Oklahoma were like head and shoulders above everybody else. And even a little bit to this extent, when Oklahoma was playing Iowa State, you were like, man, that was pretty damn good. But I don't remember if we said it on here, and I don't want to like say like without receipts. So like if someone called me out, if someone heard something different. But Oklahoma's offense is as efficient as Dylan Gabriel will be. And if he isn't hyper efficient, which they had 3 turnovers on Saturday, if they're not hyper efficient, if they don't play an A+, if he doesn't play an A+ game, that offense is okay. And now still, they scored 33. They could have potentially won that game. Kansas can run the ball, but you turn the ball over 3 times against a team that likes to run the ball as much as Kansas does, you're setting yourself up for failure. So Oklahoma being head and shoulders above the rest is true when they're sharp. Their best is way better than other people's best, in the same way that Texas's is. Texas's best is better than everybody else's best, but how often can you expect that best to show up? That's the thing that I think people overestimate, is that they look at the potential and they'll say, wow, Texas's talent, and when they're clicking, they are really hard to beat. Well, yeah, but they also have to be clicking for that to happen, which is why a team like Texas or Oklahoma or Kansas State, I would say, to me, Kansas State is the more dangerous one at the moment, because their floor is also a lot higher than the other team's floor, where Texas's floor is really low. Like, if they end up trying to fight themselves, they beat the shit out of BYU this weekend.
They're also on their backup quarterback now.
Right, but
who's good.
Their floor is down because they can start infighting. They've shown that. Not necessarily this year, but in seasons past. Oklahoma's floor is what we saw against Kansas, which they still almost won the game. It's pretty decent. But Kansas State's, with that Avery Johnson, I think it's Avery Johnson. Is that the kid's
quarterback, yeah.
The quarterback's name? As a change of pace, whenever they need some kind of a jump to bring him in, that provides a different angle for this offense. Now, last thing about Kansas State before we kind of move on to what you wanted to mention.
I can kind of transition into Kansas State. One thing too. I now have 2 things, but go.
Okay, that's a tease. So with Kansas State, having a guy like Avery Johnson, their last 2 games they've won by a combined 82-3, which is impressive. And it's, when you look at it, it's sort of the new quarterback who don't know what you like type thing. Whereas by the time Iowa State gets to them, somebody would have slowed down Kansas State's offense. So it's not like you're going to be expecting them to score 41. So this is all sort of a long-winded way of saying, I think the top of the conference is closer than a lot of people are really giving it credit for, because there's 5 one-loss teams right now. There will be a maximum of 3 at the end of this week, because Kansas State and Texas play each other, 1 loss. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma play each other, each with 1 loss, and Iowa State plays Kansas. So if Iowa State wins, and the winner of those other ones, those are going to be the 3 one-loss teams at the end of this weekend. So there's a maximum of 3 that are going to be left. So Iowa State's in a good position, and I don't think that you can look around the conference and be like, man, there's no way. Like, at the beginning of the season, everyone's like, oh, no way we touch Texas. Are you sure? Like, what makes you say that now after having watched the bigger chunk of the season? It feels like the top of the conference is a lot closer than people are going to give it credit for.
And you hit on one of my points. I was going to say it's a big slate this weekend. So, yeah, I mean, Iowa State, obviously Kansas, Kansas State and Texas. So that's 2 teams that are tied for first place as well. And then Bedlam. I mean, anything can happen in Bedlam. Oklahoma State's playing really well right now. Oklahoma's coming off a loss. So how do they rebound?
Running back and go. Is it Ollie
Gordon?
Yeah.
Ollie Gordon. He's leading the nation in rushing.
Didn't he have like 280 yards or something like that?
He went crazy against West Virginia.
Yeah.
It was
and against most recent one against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
In the second half, he had like 150 yards in the second half.
Well, against West Virginia, it was something similar to that, where he had like 90 yards or something going into the fourth quarter, and then he blew up for like 200 in the fourth quarter alone.
282 versus West Virginia, and then versus Cincinnati, he had 271.
Yeah. Kid can get it.
Almost 600 yards.
What year is
2
he?
games.
He's a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore, right? I think he's a true sophomore.
True sophomore.
Yeah. So
Iowa State was big on him. I know that.
there's reasons why.
Yep. So the last thing I'll say, then we can dive into Michael Swain. I want to put an asterisk. I'm going to go back a few weeks and put an asterisk next to something we had talked about. Talking about Tyler Perkins, perked by the pound, coming back down to earth, saying that, oh, he's not human, he's a robot. And we saw in the TCU game, he was human. Skirt. Asterisk next to that. A little birdie had told me that, and it makes sense, that the Iowa State used new balls in that game. And new balls are hard. They're hard to kick. They are more oblong shaped. And so in that game, Perkins only averaged 34 yards per punt, which is very uncharacteristically of him. He has averaged about 43-ish yards per punt per game. So he's about 10 yards. So I want to apologize to him for that if he's listening, because get that game out of here. I'm back on the All-American train.
Okay, so can we just break that down for a second for most people that don't really process the fact that like a football's a football, isn't it?
I mean, yes and no. It can change shapes as it gets broken in. And A new football at the seams is very hard. So a new football at the seams in cold, it's like kicking a rock. Brutal. And so a new ball in and of itself, though, it's harder because it's not beat in, it's not broken in. And so in the kicking and punting game is really where you're going to see a big difference in it. And Contreras missed a field goal in that one too, but he's a dog, so he only went 2 for 3.
Well, one thing just like about footballs that, well, the construction of a football, and I think this is something that people might not understand. There are balls labeled kicking balls, and they are old and beaten up. They are horrible
put through
to
the
play
jugs
with.
machines.
They are horrible to use with your hands.
And they're wonderful to kick with. We call them balloon balls.
So as there's a line that to keep, it's not just like a slap of leather and you push some air in it. There's some like a liner underneath the inside of it to keep the air tension the right amount. Well, as they get kicked or put through the jugs machine or just over time, they get, whatever, pushed in an equipment truck and put set stuff on top of. Well, as that pressure kind of hits it, it stretches out that liner. And so if you were to look at the kicking footballs, they're the same brand. Like they're all Nike footballs. I think Iowa State uses Nike football still. And like the diameter of a new ball is, I don't know, let's say it's 11 inches. I'm sure there's a statistic that like it's actually whatever. It's 11 12 inches of the diameter of the ball. That from point to point, it's still the same. Well, as you kick it more, now the diameter is like 13, 14 inches. So it's more like a rugby ball than it is.
And there are no points.
And there's no more points. So like the ability, like the margin for error then goes up because it's a lot flatter of a surface that you're kicking as opposed to a more angular surface. So if it's a smaller diameter, it's a smaller circle. If you're 1/2 a centimeter to the right on your foot with a tighter ball, that ball is going to go way off to the side versus if you have a flat surface you're kicking, it's going to be much more directed. So yeah, like kicking balls are different. And so when they have on the sidelines, for those that are weird enough to actually pay attention to watching the ball cycle in and out on any kicking play that is different. So whether it's a punt or a field goal kick, play like on a 3rd down stop. So this weekend, Kansas, it's 3rd and 7, and they go to pass, they get sacked. It's 3rd and 13, or it's now 4th and 13. Obvious punting down. They are for sure punting. Watch that. Just follow the football. That ball is going to get brought to a referee. Referee's going to toss it to the sideline to a guy who has like an orange jacket on or a blue jacket with an orange check. He's going to put that ball in a bucket or in his little, like a caddy, little pouch, and then take out another one and throw it back in. And so that's just to get rid of the throwing footballs or the game footballs and to get in the kicking ones. And I don't think you're going to be able to spot it from a distance. Just watch how much dingier they are.
Well, yes and no. So I remember that my sophomore year, I think it was, Arnaud would pick out 8 balls a game, whatever it was. You pick out the 8 balls from all the footballs that Iowa State had and say, these are the 8 balls that I want to use.
Yeah, and the quarterback usually gets to choose that. And like the backup quarterback gets to choose like 1 or 2.
And I would always tell him like, hey, get some balloon balls in there. He said, no, I hate passing with those. And I said, well, I hate kicking with these football-shaped footballs.
I want a rugby-shaped football.
So not always will you get a kicking ball in the game for a kick. But I will say, and then this is the last thing we can dive into the interview. Randy Bullock was the kicker at Texas A&M, won the Groza in either 2010 or 2011. He must have told the ball guy on the side, hey, only put in these balloon balls because the balls exploded off of his foot, and he won the Groza. So I blame our sideline guys for not putting in balloon balls whenever I played. That's why I didn't win the Groza. Definitely was not because I wasn't talented enough.
What a joke. Okay, so with that, we're going to bring in Michael Swain. He is covering Kansas football. This is going to be the Goldfinch Athletics guest. Goldfinch Athletics, what we got going on right now. We are heading into winter, and if you are heading into winter, that means we're heading into kind of sedentary season, not able to go for as many walks.
Bulk season.
Good bulk season if you want to do it on purpose. It's not great bulk season if you do it on accident. So if you're looking for a way to get some exercise, shoot us an email. It's jeff@goldfinchathletics.com or go to goldfinchathletics.com to hit up any adult fitness. If you're looking for your child to get more youth speed and acceleration training, the same thing, goldfinchathletics.com. That is Goldfinch Sports Performance would be the program for them. So anyway, we're going to bring on Michael Swain to talk about Kansas football.
All right, now we welcome in a gentleman who used to drink the great water of Ames, hooray, and now he waves the wheat for Kansas Athletics and covers Kansas for 247 Sports. We've got Michael Swain in the house. Michael, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm loving the studio you guys got.
Heck yeah, man. It's a nice studio.
Wild Rose Casino Resort Studio. They hook us up with it. Pretty decent.
Fueled by Cody Road.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. So perfect. Yeah, we appreciate you jumping on with us, Michael. Obviously, yeah, you used to cover Iowa State. Now you cover Kansas. Good time to cover Kansas. They good in basketball, good in football now. But we are talking football on Kicking It here. Let's dive right into it. Coming off a big win off of Oklahoma. It's got to feel really good for the Kansas team. What are the spirits like right now? Obviously, it's only Monday. So,
and also, is the goalpost still in the water?
So the goalpost is not in the water. I actually know some people that went and fished it out, and I think it's or at least a portion of it is somewhere in one of the fraternity houses
Nice.
at KU. So I know
great.
some guys that went and did that. But I think everyone's really excited. So much of this season has been about, I think, realizing that, hey, Kansas is legit in terms of just being a consistent, like, competent program, where I think the way last year played out, right, where 5-0 start and then they lose and then they get the bowl eligibility and then they lose even more. Like, for so much of the season, it was a question of, okay, is this real? Can this be sustainable? And to make back-to-back bowl games for the second time in program history. This is a program that before this recent decade stretch of just being incompetent had a winning record all time, but making consistent bowl games was just not a thing that happened. And to now do this, I think fans are really, really excited about, what they've kind of got going on.
Yeah, another interesting thing is that most of the success this season has come with a backup quarterback. What information, and I'm sure you've written about this at some point, Jalen Daniels, he's gonna play, but he's not gonna play, and then he's healthy, but he's kind of not healthy. Then they're gonna redshirt him, but they're not gonna redshirt him. He's eligible. What's the deal with the quarterback's situation, and what would you say the odds of Jalen Daniels playing on Saturday is?
Yeah, so this all kind of goes back to the beginning of the season, where preseason camp starts and Jalen tweaks his back. I think the second week of camp, and then he misses about more or less a month, where the first game week of this season, Missouri State week, he really starts to ramp up, but didn't get the practice reps to start the game. So Jason Bean starts the game. Jalen is technically available to play. If KU was in like an upset situation and Jason gets a concussion or something, like, Jalen would have been able to go in. Well, then he plays the next 3 games, right? KU beats Illinois. They go on the road, they beat Nevada, and then they go back home and beat BYU. And then Texas happens, where what we're being told is that morning he wakes up and he has tweaked his back again. And he had been managing this back injury throughout the course of the season. You look at the Illinois game, and there are a couple of times when he's getting up off the turf, and you can see that he's getting up gingerly. So it is legit in terms of the actual back injury. Now, we're in this point where he is working his way back, and we just passed the month mark. So if we want to go back to the start of this, we're now at the point where he was starting to ramp up. And so it's now a question of when is that time that he actually goes back in the game? Because if you were at David Booth, Kansas Memorial Stadium on Saturday, you would have seen Jalen Daniels warm up. He was out on the field. He was throwing pregame. Granted, not super well, right? He wasn't out there ripping throws. There wasn't a ton of torque, but he was out there throwing. And so it seems like he is inching his way back. But with the back injury, it's hard to kind of predict what it's going to do. So playing this week, doesn't seem like that is overly likely, but Lance Leipold's also kind of like a Matt Campbell. He's very secretive with his injuries. So I have a feeling that Leipold's going to come out one of these weeks and say, oh, yeah, Jalen's not playing this week. And then Saturday he'll play.
It's going to be this Saturday.
Yeah.
He's going to throw for 304 touchdowns.
And so we'll see what day that is. I don't know who the unlucky team is. If it'll be Iowa State, Texas Tech, K-State. But it seems like Jalen will play again for Kansas this year. And we're getting closer to that. But I don't know if this is the week it happens.
Yeah, and so the thing with Jason Bean, like, he's not a great quarterback, but he's a good offensive key to make stuff work. So
Dude can scoot.
He was 15 for 32 with 2 picks this past week, but he had this really long touchdown run that only he could have done. Like, he might be the fastest quarterback in the country, and the ability he has to make runs happen is sometimes negated by his decision making in the or capacity in the passing game. Yeah. What is the Kansas fans' relationship with Jason Bean because he's the backup quarterback, best job in the world, but he's now had to play for a while, so now he's not the backup anymore, and he's sort of like in this hit or miss. So what is the Kansas fans' relationship to Jason Bean?
It's hit or miss. Did he throw an interception on the last drive, or did he lead a touchdown drive? That is how much this relationship fluctuates. And with Jason, you have seen growth since that game in Ames 2 years ago, where he fumbles the ball off his leg, looks out of his depth. Like, this is a different quarterback than Iowa State fans saw 2 years ago. At the same time, it's still a guy that struggles with decision making. Like, if you go back to the last 2 games in the fourth quarter, you look at Oklahoma State, he throws 2 awful picks, just awful. And he makes even more dangerous throws on top of that. And then you go to this Oklahoma game, and look, guys, like, he made the plays in the end, but the 2 drives previous, like, they were bad interceptions. And so I look at him, it's the ultimate backup quarterback where there are good moments, bad moments, and you really are just hoping you're getting the good moment at the end of the game. And so we'll see. And I think too, you mentioned the rushing attack. Like,
that's been good.
With him, he doesn't like to run though. And if you saw the play where he slides at the goal line, he slid at the goal line. When was the last time you ever saw a player do that wasn't like an intentional, we're going to bleed clock here? He could have ran into the end zone, but it involved taking a hit. And so he doesn't do it. And so that for me is kind of the big thing where Jalen Daniels has no issue taking hits. And maybe that's why he gets injured so often.
Yeah.
But Jason's very protective of himself. And I think he also knows that if he goes down, it's a true freshman walk-on that's coming on the field.
That's what I was going to ask you too. Is he kind of not afraid to get hit, but is he very, like, if he has a chance to step out of bounds, is he going to do that as opposed to get 2 more extra yards?
Totally. And I think that's A, who Jason is as a quarterback, and B, I think it's a situation. And Jason's smart. He knows that he is the last resort right now. And if he gets hurt, it's going to be bad. It's not going to be great because you're asking a guy that was in high school last year to come out and play in a Big 12 game when KU's playing in competitive games. It's not like KU's getting blown out. Like,
yeah, and this game's on big ESPN. Like, this is going to be the environment up in Ames. And like, because what was your last year of covering Iowa State? It was 2020?
21. Yeah, so when everyone came back.
Yeah, so like was the stadium still restricted then, or was it? And that was also the year of the Brock Purdy, Brees, and they kind of underachieved a little bit. But like the night games over the last 5 or 6 years have hot games. I mean, super energetic. If there's a redshirt or a true freshman kid that has to come into that environment
too.
Hey, don't talk shit about walk-ons.
No, I'm not at all. But I'm just saying that's an intimidating. I'm not talking shit. That's an intimidating environment.
You are. I'm taking
No, you're right though, and like that's my biggest concern for this game. KU's not been great on the road. Like, there's no 2 ways about it here. Like, I wrote about it on our website this week. Like, KU has not had a good start on the road since November of 2021. Think about that. Like, I wasn't covering the team. So, it's been a long time. And so for me, that's a big concern I have going into this game. Like, if they get down and this crowd gets going, like, that's tough to overcome.
Especially because they don't like to throw, especially without Jalen Daniels. Like, you have to throw your way back into the game. And a team, especially like with Iowa State secondary, that would be a rough recipe to overcome because I think Iowa State is second in the conference in interceptions, and the team that was first in the conference picked them off twice last week. Now, granted, they gave up a zillion points because Oklahoma then turned the ball over. But at the same time, Kansas so far this year has run for 1,700 yards through 8 games, which is wild. That's 200 plus a game. And so here's my assessment of it. And I honestly haven't watched a ton of Kansas football this year so far. Devin Neal gives me serious David Montgomery vibes in that he's a guy who is just physically hard to take down. It's like he's an explosive runner, but he's not like 4.2 explosive. He's like 4.4 explosive, but he's a truck to try and tackle. Walking through the rest of kind of the running game, because I don't think it's anything like it's not like an Air Force triple option. It's just they execute the run game really well in their reads and pulls. What other guys do Iowa State fans need to watch and sort of the style of their running game? Because that is Kansas football is running the ball.
Yeah, they are. And I think it starts with the offensive line. And I know this is something that Iowa State fans have talked about this year, right? With the offensive line they have and maybe an inability to run the ball consistently. KU has developed a really good line where these guys execute and they do a very, very good job of it. You look at what they did against Oklahoma and the amount of pancakes they had just off leverage. Like, Kansas offensive line does not have a bunch of NFL guys. It's purely knowing where you need to be, where your hands need to be, and then executing the blocks. And they're able to really, really open up some holes. And you mentioned, right, Devin Neal's really explosive. I think he's shown a different change of pace than he has shown during his KU career. And so I think he's been so impressive. And Daniel Highshaw for me is the guy that brings the pop, the physicality to this running backs room. And I think he's the guy that, because he's been healthy, Devin Neal has been able to not shoulder so much of the load. And it was obviously in this game last year that Highshaw dislocated his hip again, and that ended up being a season-ending injury for him. And he's back and he's being physical again. And so I think those two are really the key running backs. And I think KU does such a great job of creating mismatches, right? I think you saw it a lot with Dylan Sainer and Kolar and a lot of those tight ends, right? Where they use motion to get those guys going and getting in the right angles to open up space. And that's exactly what Andy Kotelnicki is doing with these guys. And they've got a good offensive lineup there that really helps open up these holes, where I've not looked at the numbers in the last 2 weeks, but through the first like 4 or 5 weeks of the season, like KU is near the top of the conference in terms of getting yards before contact, where they had space to run into. And so they've been really, really good at that so far this year.
Yeah, and I mean, just to finish that point, and then Grant, you can ask whatever you're going to ask. The if you go down their leading rushers so far this year, as a testament to the offensive line, Neal averaging 6.7 per carry, Highshaw averaging 6.1 a carry, McDuffie averaging 5.5 a carry, Jason Bean averaging 5 yards a carry. That's their top 5 rushers this season. All 5 of them averaging more than 5 yards a carry. That's not because all 5 are like exemplary ball carriers. It's just because when you get 5, if you're averaging 5 yards a carry for your first 5 guys, it's because they're not getting touched until 3 or 4 yards, which is that's why the running game can work.
I was first going to say a dislocated hip would hurt really bad.
Second time he's done it.
I'd hang him up. I would hang him up.
Ouch.
No, sorry, I'm done.
Ouch.
One thing I was going to say, though, Michael, is that Iowa State's a very young team. You know, we play 25, I think, freshmen. I don't really know much about Kansas. So what is tell me more about Kansas. Like, is their offensive line older? Obviously, we know Jason Bean's been around for a little bit. Devin Neal's been around for a little bit. What are they like, though? What are they? Are they old, young? Tell me more.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of when Iowa State was at its, I don't know, I want to say peak, but in 2020, 2021, Iowa State was old. And they had a lot of super seniors and guys that were upperclassmen who played a lot of football. And that's exactly what this team is. The last time KU went into Ames, they were the youngest Power 5 team. And they've had some of the fewest amount of transfers of anyone in the conference or the country. So they've had these guys in the program for a long time. And you look at the offensive line, they're going to lose 2 guys after this year because of they're in their COVID years right now. They're going to lose a tight end. They're going to bring back all their wide receivers. But these are all guys now, especially on offense, that have had time to develop in this system. And so it's very complex. It asks a lot of their players, right? They run a lot of different concepts. And so they're old now and they all understand kind of what is expected of them. So on offense, they're old. They're very experienced, right? They have the most returning production of any team on offense in the country. Defensively, they are at the age now where there are certain positions where they're very old. Linebacker, they're going to lose 2 guys. They're going to lose a guy at safety. They'll lose a guy at defensive tackle. But they're kind of in this transitional phase where the defensive line now is a bunch of new faces. They went into the portal, got 2 defensive tackles in Devin Phillips and Gage Keys. 2 guys have been really good this year. A defensive end in Austin Booker from Minnesota, a couple other defensive ends from the portal, and they're new faces. So I think generally this is an older team, but it's still a team that if you look to next year, they can still return a lot. They may not be number 1 in the country in returning production, but they'll be in the top third. So it's a team that's it's riding this fine margin right now where it's guys that have been around for a long time, but also have years left. And so it's kind of just this nice little blend.
Well, it's good too, because Leipold, obviously establishing a new culture. It's good to have, some guys that have been there around for a little bit and some newer guys too. And we don't need to dive into special teams just yet, but older guys, I did see that you guys have a true freshman punter who's 23.
Yeah. Damon Greaves, Aussie. That's something KU needed to fix. Their punting game was awful last year, awful. And they've been able to do more with it where, this guy can do different punts. Like, it's not just, all right, man, just kick it as hard and as far as you can. Like, they're executing different things. And it's just a weapon that KU's not had on special teams. And they've really struggled on special teams overall. But yeah, Damon Greaves.
Are you talking about this year? They've struggled on special teams?
No, last year. They lost games last year on special teams. They lost them. Like, they were
Iowa
terrible.
State lost a game against Kansas on special teams last year. If we're talking about special teams.
This Is there a
That's
new
really
kicker?
interesting.
There's a new kicker, right?
Yeah, and he's killing it, man.
So I thought.
Independent. You got any more special teams questions?
I've always got special teams questions.
You can ask for special teams questions. It's more of a broad strokes question.
Okay, we can
Do it.
You want to wrap up special teams and then dive into your broad strokes? Okay. So you mentioned the punter. He does different things. So he's from Australia. So is he doing the rugby style rollouts? Is he doing a straight on punt? What kind of, is he turning around backwards and kicking over his head? Like, what do we, what's
Bicycle kick.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's doing bicycle kicks in the
Wow.
way back there. No, so they are doing traditional punts. They have done a couple times where they've tried to do some of the rugby style, but it is very traditional. And what they're trying to do is find this balance of kicking it as high as you can, but also trying to get a certain distance where all that matters is fair catching. Like, I've not looked this week, but I believe entering last week, KU had allowed 0 return yards on punts.
Oh, wow.
Because all they're doing is kicking it as high as they can and getting guys down the field. So they're averaging, I think, like 42 yards net per punt,
Yeah.
but they're really not allowing any sort of returns. They're mitigating any sort of big play or field flipping the opposing team can do. And I think that's exactly what KU's trying to do, right? They're trying to limit the mistakes, widen the margins as much as you can. Don't give the other team a chance to make one of your guys miss, and then all of a sudden they're inside your territory. So I think punting wise, they've really tried to find this nice balance. And so far they've been able to do it. It was a slow start for Damon to start the year, but as time has gone on, I think he's really gained some confidence and is playing pretty well right now.
Well, I saw he doesn't have any touchbacks on the year, and 6 of his 17 punts have been inside the 20. So yeah, sounds like he's
Good
playing pretty
control.
well. We can dive into the kicker too, as well too.
It's the most important position on the field.
You're damn right it is. So I see that Seth Keller is a senior transfer from Texas State.
Yeah.
He's only attempted he's 9 of 11 in the year. His long of 44, hasn't attempted anything over 44. Is that
Interesting.
Not right? 9 of 11.
Yeah, no, you're right. I feel like he should have kicked more. This is just me thinking, because I'll tell you what, guys, like, the field goal kicking unit has not been very good lately. This is something the last 3 games that it's kind of started to be an issue. So you go back to the UCF game and KU's winning by a lot, and they decide to put in the backup kicker, and he's a lefty compared to Seth Keller being a righty.
Different.
That's tough. That's tough for a holder.
Did the holder change, or did they keep the holder in?
Same holder.
That's
Bad
tough.
hold.
Well, of
Bad
course
hold.
it's a bad hold. It's like
Right.
It's like having a first baseman be like, all right, now you're catching with your right hand.
And
Yeah.
the catcher's mitt. Yeah.
So they same holder, I believe, and so they messed that up, and then they put Keller back in later in the game, and he kicks it low, so his angles are very low. He's also a kind of a short king, if you will.
Notice that. Let's go, Blake Group of fans out there.
So he's a little smaller, so he kicks it really low, and then I think it was UCF had some guys with length, got their hands up, blocked it, and then you go to Oklahoma State, and it was an abject disaster, like missed point afters. Another muffed one, like, it was bad. And then this past week, Keller makes 2 of his shorter ones, but then one of his longer ones, I believe, was 42 yards.
Yeah, missed 42.
He was short and right. So
Short on a 42 yarder.
confidence. Yeah, there was some wind and it was wet. So I'm struggling
Short king though. Yeah.
understand what is going on with that. So it's one of those where confidence, like, I don't know if this unit is going into this game with, like, yeah, we're gonna kill it.
Yeah, and him entering the environment that is the Jack Tri Stadium. Seth Keller's about
In
to
the
be
Ames. Duck.
Yeah. Okay, now to you, Jeff. I'm done. That's all. I'm out of here, guys.
The questions I was interested in asking. So, Kansas has, against Oklahoma, they have big noon kickoff. The Sooners are coming to town for the last time. You have this Dylan Gabriel. He's this Heisman guy, and we're gonna take him down a peg. And then it's this close game, and there's turnovers everywhere, and it's like made for TV movie. And Oklahoma's a chance to win it, and they don't. And then Kansas fans storm the field, and they throw the goalpost and now they have to generate that energy again, and they have to come up to Ames and generate that energy on the road against a team that's roughly the same quality as the one that just happened. So, what have they said about avoiding a letdown? And I don't know if you have a letdown game conversation against a team that's 4-1 in conference, but, like,
For sure.
what's your thought or feeling on the energy level of this program? And is there some, like, man, we just had this crazy finish and now we have to go out and do it again?
Yeah, Lance Leipold talked about that with us on Monday. You know, he talks about it every week, got to flush it and get back to work. And I think last season, KU did a really good job in those first 5 games when they were 5-0 of flushing it and moving on and coming out with intensity the next week. And this season, it's been a roller coaster where they beat Illinois, then they go on the road and kind of drop the ball against Nevada. Then they go back home. They beat BYU, but then they go on the road and lose to Texas. Then they come back home, destroy UCF. Then they're down 14-0 at Oklahoma State the next week. So it's been a flowy season where there's ups and downs. And I think Lance Leipold wants his team to go out there, like you said, and attack and bring that same energy and that same intensity, because KU's in a spot now where, look, they play Iowa State, they play K-State. They can technically play their way into competing for a spot in the title game if they win these games. And it's going to come down to, do you kind of have that championship mentality of that's last week, we now go into this new week with a new environment, ready to embrace it and give it our all. So it's going to be a huge test, because again, this is a team that's not started well on the road. It's a team that hasn't beaten a Power 5 team on the road since week 2 of last season at West Virginia. They've struggled on the road just generally. So it's a game that I think Lance Leipold's going to have a lot to point to in recent weeks and saying, hey, we need to be better on the road. If you guys want to achieve the things you've said you want to achieve, you got to bring it. And so it'll be up to them to make sure that happens.
That's what I was going to say too, that they've had Kansas had 3 road games this year. 2 of them have been losses. And then the one victory was at Nevada. Yeah.
It was a terrible performance.
Yeah. Interesting. That might be something to keep in mind on Saturday.
Yeah.
What is one thing I'm interested in, and we haven't asked every guest on this because still trying to find the footing on it, just because you're like the 6th guest. So congratulations on being top 10. Top 10. But one thing I'm interested in, when you have a team, now granted, reporters are neutral. It's not like you're not rooting for or against it. Winning makes your job easier. So like, obviously the team wins, you get more interested, you get more clicks, it's better for you. But like, independent of kind of you being a neutral kind of observer of the animals at the zoo, what is the feeling going into this game from the Kansas fan base, and what are the expectations for this Friday? Because I would say for Iowa State fans, it feels like this is a game that they're expecting to win. It's not like Iowa State's expecting, like 2 years ago when they came up here, it was like 42-0 at halftime. Like, it's not nowhere near expecting that. They recognize that Kansas is better than that, but they are expecting to win the game. What is the Kansas fans' expectation of this game?
I think they are expecting to win, because I think it's right. You got 2 fan bases that are going into this saying, we're going to win this game.
I have to pause you real quick, just because for those that are just only listening to audio, they just heard me laugh at that response. I'm not laughing at that response. I'm laughing because Grant had to be restrained from jumping at the TV for the idea that somebody could have considered winning in Ames.
How dare them.
Anyway,
No,
continue.
Impossible. I think they do think they're going to win. And look, I think sometimes you look at early in the season and then you kind of flush things out as Big 12 play starts. And look, this has been the traditional Iowa State Matt Campbell season, right? Bad September. They put it together in October. And then by the time late October comes, they're in a spot to compete for a spot in the Big 12 title. Like this, I've been around it. Like, this is how it goes sometimes. And so I think fans pay attention in September. And then conference play starts, and it's kind of, you focus more on Kansas and the Chiefs are on and other things that are going on. So I think sometimes maybe they can be overlooked. But I think Kansas fans have the confidence that, hey, if they can play like they did against Oklahoma or better, that they can win this game. And I think, the betting spread shows it, right? It's going to be close, or it should be close. And so it's kind of one of these coin flip games, and it's going to come down to, I think, which quarterback makes the fewer amount of mistakes.
Last question for me. Is Hunter Dickinson as arrogant in person as he seems through interviews?
I've not picked up on that.
Okay.
I think you sense confidence. I'm not sure if it's arrogance.
Okay.
I think he's got a lot of self-belief in himself. And I think it's different. I've seen arrogant players in person before. Yeah, it's not that. It's not it's not the, oh, I'm better than you, I'm looking down at you. It's like, yeah, I'll sit here and talk to you. I know that I am better than X, Y, and Z people that are out there. He's entertaining to cover, though. He's entertaining to cover.
Big Rob Jones is going to steal his lunch and stuff him in a locker that steals his girlfriend.
Hey, look at Armando Baycott. What do you do, Armando Baycott?
That's right.
Robert Jones. He's still playing at Iowa State.
Hell yeah, Bob Jones. He's our Perry Ellis, baby.
I remember when he came with TJ. That's so funny.
Yeah. His first time at Iowa State. Yeah.
16 years ago. Bob Jones still in the same minivan. You got anything else, Grant?
I don't. This is good. Thanks, Mike.
This
I
is fun.
appreciate you hopping on, man. It's always good to hear, kind of a behind the curtains look at, the opponent. So I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, and always enjoy the stuff you guys do at Cyclone Fanatic.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
That was Michael Swain of 247 down there waving the wheat in Lawrence, Kansas. We appreciate him hopping on. Good dude.
Fun.
Yeah.
Former Iowa Stater. So
yeah, interesting insight because he mentioned off air that he obviously covered Willich and Eli Sanders and the guys that are playing now for Iowa State. So it's interesting, I'm sure, from his point of view to see the guys he covered recruiting now playing on the opposing team.
Yeah, so that was it's also good insight because I was expecting asking what is the expectations of the fan base. I would expect, if I'm a Kansas fan coming off the Oklahoma win, you don't go and be like, I'm probably going to lose to Iowa State now. Like, I would expect them to expect to win, which I think you want because it makes the loss more crushing.
That's right.
So anyway, thanks to Michael Swain, 247, on the Goldfinch Athletics interview on Kickin' It. We're going to be back next week, hopefully after Iowa State gets a win and then brings themselves into a three-way tie for first place going into November, which would just A+.
Playing meaningful ball in November. That's what you want.
All right, everybody.
That's what you want out of your ball club. Thanks to all of our loyal listeners still listening. And remember, adopt, don't shop.